Hi there, and welcome to my channel. The channel I'm still calling Work in Progress. Just kind of watching to see where it's going to go. Being that I'm not always a very patient person, this has been a lesson for me to say, look, I don't know where this is. I'm not getting a clear guidance right now of exactly how this is supposed to be, other than I still have this vision, if you will, or this idea that this channel, it could be a place where everyday people, just like you and me, can have conversations where we share the stories of our life journey. And the purpose of this sharing is to really help another. We're definitely going through a challenging time right now on this planet and the human evolution, etc. And I think we really need to find ways, easy, just simple ways, that we can help one another. And this feels like that. And that also, I think in doing this, we'd find that we're more alike than not alike. So before I get started, and I just want to mention that there's a contact link below this video. So if this idea appeals to you, just to have a conversation with me about something within your life's journey that you'd like to share and be sharing with others, then please contact me through that link, and we'll talk about it and see what we want to do, and then do that on Zoom and have that on this channel. And we'll go from there. So today, I want to talk about the idea of, acceptance. We hear this all the time in the spiritual world, accepting what is. And I really want to talk about what I think that means, or what it's meant to me during this process of my journey, which I've been on forever. Is it really is a challenge. And because here's the deal. I don't know if you're like me, but I can accept certain things that are more my preference. No problem. Total acceptance. But as soon as something comes along that isn't my preference, then there becomes this struggle. And then I start to suffer and struggle through this whatever is happening that I don't want to have happen. Now, I believe we each come in with our particular preferences, personalities, what we like, what we don't like, etc. And that starts to develop, obviously, in childhood, and then moves into, as we move into adulthood, it continues. So I think it's interesting that oftentimes, for some strange reason, our spouse or our partner is the opposite of what we are. So for instance, I'm a person that really likes to have be neat and organized in my home. It really seems that's where I find my peace, my place I want to be. So I like really keeping things very organized, not crazy organized, but organized and neat. My partner, on the other hand, he doesn't mind clutter and or disorganization. And so I find that so many of us are put together with the partner that's in the opposite preference than we are. And learning to accept that is, first, because it's there every day, is really a struggle, at least for me. And I have a feeling for others as well. And there's obviously a give and take in everything. For instance, I don't really like to cook. I'll do it, I'll cook, and some things I enjoy cooking, but for the most part, I don't have a lot of confidence in cooking. It's not something that I have a preference for. Yet, my spouse, he loves to cook, and that's a good thing, because that way, and he likes to cook, he likes to eat, those kinds of things. So that way there's a balance. I'm more than happy to have him cook. I feel guilty sometimes, so I do try to be a part of the cooking for sure, or the menu making, whatever. But anyway, that's the difference. My preference isn't cooking. His preference is. And so he definitely is the one that gladly goes to the stove and cooks. So there's these differences, right, that we have, but how do we get to the place where we actually have acceptance in something that we don't prefer? And acceptance doesn't mean that you can force yourself to accept any more than you can force someone else to change in the way you want them to. It doesn't work that way. But how do you authentically, organically, start to accept something that you really have you don't have a preference for? And how do you do that without feeling like you're becoming a doormat or giving up your whatever we want to call it, your I don't even know what to call it, your preferences, let's just call it that. How do we do this? Because I find this very, very challenging, and sometimes more than other times, and I don't even know why that happens. But I think it happens because as I get closer to, let's say I'm more willing to accept something that's not quite in my face, like even the weather, like right now it's really cold in the Bay Area. I got my vest on and it feels like the cold weather just is coming through the house, and it's rainy, it's yucky. But that I can kind of get to accept. Do I like it? No. I like the sunshine and I like the perfect weather, but I can more easily get into a mindset of accepting the weather because I'm pretty sure I can't change it, right? I don't know how. I don't know how to change the weather, so I have to come to a place within and accept it, even though I have a preference of sunny weather, which maybe most of us do. So, but that's a lot easier for me to accept than the clutter. And the clutter in my house is how this works is we each have kind of our domain, I could say. So like his office is where his domain is, so that's where the clutter is. And I can, kind of appeal sometimes to him to clean up some of the clutter, and he does, and that helps. But the point isn't him doing something. Again, we can't change the other person. We cannot change another person. I mean, unless I guess we held a gun to someone's head, then they'll change for that moment. But we can't change anybody else. The only one we can change is ourselves, and that's what we're talking about. Acceptance. So I find myself where I try to make this in my mind, like I'll say, okay, I don't like what's going on here. However, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to really try to accept it. But that doesn't work either, because at a certain point, it's like so there in front of me, I believe, it's me, my own belief, and that I get so miserable with it that I have to start to loudly complain. And then the suffering is there. You know what I mean? So how do we get, because if we can get, this is what I know, is if we can get to this acceptance level, basically what is, but really have it on an organic, authentic place inside ourselves, then there is the sense of well-being. I mean, there's other examples, like on the freeway, you get cut off, and you're not accepting that. And so can become road rage, right? If that's your thing. There's these triggers, is really what they are, that go off inside of us about our preferences. And so some people are more, I don't know what to call it, more verbal, let's do that, with their preferences, way less willing to give up on their preferences. So so some people are just constantly in this vein of trying to accept what is. I mean, some things obviously are extremely difficult. Grief, the loss of a loved one, to accept that, but eventually a person does, or we'll hope that people do, and they do, have to accept that to move on with their lives. Do they accept at the moment it happens? Hell no. But they do move to a place of not their preference, but accepting, knowing this can't change, it's not changeable. So maybe on the things that we think we can change, we have this illusion, right, that we can change something to be more our preference. Maybe that's where we get caught in this whole thing of accepting or not accepting. It's a very fascinating subject when you really start to dig in and look at it. And when I really look at it, it's like I'm in a way, I'm abusive to myself when I'm not willing to accept what is. It just is. I'm the one that causes me to be struggling and to be in emotional pain or whatever it is. And as long as I stay focused on that thing, on that preference, then the larger it gets, meaning the story behind it. And then I have a whole story about why this shouldn't be and why it should be accepted. And, it starts from very small things to big things, and certain things are like, how do we accept? But the question isn't, how do we accept this horrendous thing, let's say, that's happening, whether it be child trafficking. How do we accept that? Well, it's not accept it like it's okay, no problem. It's within ourselves to understand within that, okay, this is what's happening. If there's something that we actually are called to do and move toward trying to deal with a particular something, and that happens all the time where people find kind of a purpose or their mission towards something that's really not very acceptable. And so they move forward in trying to make a contribution toward changing or shifting the situation. So, there's that piece of it as well, where sometimes you can have an influence over accepting or not accepting. But I'm talking just about really everyday stuff. You know what I mean? Like road rage, like one like with partners or spouses, one's neat, the other's got clutter. There can be the even the extremes, I guess, of, let's say, partnership where one's vegetarian and one is not a vegetarian. But, there's ways to work that stuff out, I think. We can be more challenging, accepting of one another, perhaps. And maybe some of these things just aren't, and that's where separation, divorce takes place. I don't know. But what I really want to stay focused on here is just the everyday accepting, because I think when we can get truly, organically, authentically, to that place of accepting, for instance, if I can get to the place of accepting the clutter, then, and I mean really positively accepting it, even though it's not my preference, then the struggle stops for me. Then I'm not focused on it. And, maybe it would even change. I don't know. That's a thought. But the thing is this is part of our learning. This is part of the awakening process. This is part of the shifting. And this happens through watching ourselves, through a self-inquiry. When I notice that I'm starting to get really crazed over the clutter, or the other piece is I like things done in advance of needing to be done, and my partner is kind of more of the, kind of not so much. So, I have to watch, where am I getting caught up, and where's my focus, and what am I what's most bothering me? And then I have to move outside of my head, because if I keep it in the mind and the intellect, then I start with the story, and then pretty soon, I'm on that in the loop if I can't let it go. And then I'm in the illusion that I think I'm going to change something that I can't change. I have no influence of changing. And then I'm often running into struggling. and suffering. So I thought it's a good idea for some of us if we could begin to see where we get frustrated. Really look at where we get frustrated, but stay out of the story. It's on the freeway. It's not about that person should be shouldn't be not doing this, shouldn't be doing this, whatever it is. Should be a better driver. Don't get in the story, but just notice. I feel frustration. I'm not accepting what's going on. I'm resisting this. Whatever it is that comes up in the day, begin to notice how much or how many times you begin to get into resistance of something. Like I can get in resistance of the weather, knowing full and well I can't do anything about the weather. I don't know how to stop the rain, and I don't know how to have sun 365 days a year. I don't know any of this, All I know is that I start to feel frustrated, or I start to feel, I start to feel that I don't want it to be, I'm resisting. So the difference between accepting and resisting is huge. Resisting is always going to bring pain. Always. Just can't do anything else but bring pain and suffering. Whereas accepting brings peace, brings contentment. It doesn't take up our time. We don't have a story around it. So as I've begun to do this for myself, to really try to look deeper into what I'm doing, how I'm struggling, how I'm resisting, as I look deeper and let go of the story, because that's the big one. See, we start to build a story of why we're right, why my preference is good, why shouldn't I expect this, right? That's the story. Because when we can come from that more neutral, organic place, one, we make way better decisions. And sometimes we can be quite effective in maybe possibly changing something, or besides ourselves. And we're a calmer person. We're better. We're easier to be around ourselves, so to speak, if that makes any sense. So again, as I look at this from my perspective, and I really get it, I'm getting it. So we start to get things on a more intellectual level, but as we begin to really look at this stuff, then oftentimes we begin to see more of a, I don't know what to call it, but a way to better our situation, meaning change our minds about something, and even though it's not my preference, to accept it. So when we can accept, we're not in resistance, we're not in a fight against, we're not building a story. What is, right? Easier said than done, no doubt. And maybe for some people it's easier, and for others it's harder. I don't know. Like I said, I think we all have things we can accept, no biggie, it doesn't bother me. And then the things that really make us crazy. And those things are our teachers. Those are the ways that we learn to get to peace. It's part of the awakening. It allows us to move into a much more fulfilled, joyful experience in this lifetime. So I recommend, I guess I'm saying, or I'm sharing with what's worked, it's starting to work for me, is to really step back and become aware of what I'm resisting. If it's the clutter, it's the clutter. If it's the weather, it's the weather. Whatever it is, I can have a long list. What am I resisting right now? That's the question I ask myself. Where am I feeling this frustration right now? What do I want to change right now? And it can be such little things, It can be like the way someone parks their car in front of my house. Really? Seriously? Okay. But I notice it and say, okay, I'm in resistance to this. Can I just say it is what it is and not make the story up about the bad driver, you know? The freeway is a great place to practice this, no doubt. But we all have plenty of this in our life. If we really look at it, I'm sure we all have a good long list of our accepting or not accepting. So again, this is one baby, it's a baby step kind of, maybe more than a baby step, in beginning to get toward having peace in our life, having peace of mind, having contentment. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking for. And at the end of the day, that is what waking up out of this illusion offers. It doesn't change that all of a sudden life becomes the bed of roses, like I've said before. But what it does is it gives us an experience of okayness, of peacefulness, of allowing, accepting. So every time I begin to feel resistance, and I don't know, do we all feel it different in our bodies? I know where I feel it a lot in my throat, in my solar plexus, and just in a general frustrating feeling in my body. I'm sometimes not even aware that I'm resisting, but if I can check in with my body during the day and have this awareness, what's going on with me right now. That's a good practice too, by the way, is several times a day, if you can ask yourself or go within and say, okay, what's going on? You're going to find stuff that you're not even aware of. And I think a lot of it actually is about accepting something, and then trying to come to that place of truly, authentically, organically, coming to a place of seeing that this is futile, this is crazy. I'm trying to change the weather, really? Like, look at it for reality. What am I really trying to do here, and why do I think I can? And then that kind of gives you what do I want to call it? Looking at that knee-jerk reaction. That's oftentimes what it is, a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that we've had as a belief or in our programming for who knows how many years. So it's just like automatic response, The resistance just is automatic. The body knows that it just automatically goes into the frustration or the resistance. So sometimes maybe looking back, if we can, find where did this all begin? I mean, it really begins through, as we begin to grow as a child, through certain beliefs and environments we live in, or even cultures that we grew up in that have a particular attitude about accepting this but not accepting that, It's so common that we don't even see it most of the time, and yet it's the thing that really, really needs to be changed, needs to be let go of, needs to be looked at, and really let go from, like I say, an organic or, that place that truly you're letting go. And again, it's not saying it is your preference, right? But just because something's our preference doesn't mean that has to be that way. It's not, put in cement, like you can't change it, you can't do anything about it. No, it's changeable. It's definitely changeable in the sense of it's maybe always going to be our preference, and probably will be. However, we don't have to suffer. We don't have to get into that role of resistance. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, because I think this is a big thing that isn't looked at. I don't know how else to say it. Like, we look at the bigger picture, but we forget to look at, well, what are the small pieces that are contributing to my suffering, contributing to my struggle in life? What are they? And the only way we can come up with what they are is through our awareness of them in the first place, and then kind of digging in and saying, all right, what is this about? Where did this come from? And get out of the story, and then really ask ourselves, do I want to keep suffering over this? And sometimes we appear that we do want to keep suffering. There's so many times I think I've given up suffering and gone into acceptance on something, and maybe I have for who knows how many months, maybe even a year, and then all of a sudden something comes up that triggers that back because I haven't truly completely given up on the resistance to a particular thing. And so if it comes up, it can come up here and there, and I'm okay, and then all of a sudden it comes up in such a way, whoops, not okay, I don't want this, right? So I think that's about all I can, or probably there's a whole lot I could say about it, but I think it gets just repeating something. I hope this helps somebody. I really do. That's what I'm always doing this for. I'm hoping that it helps somebody out there. I'd love to hear your comments. What do you think? What have you done? See, this is where I'm talking about sharing in a conversation on Zoom, where we can share what's worked for you. Again, we're just everyday people. There's not one size fits all. So therefore, maybe you tried it this way and it worked for you, and maybe you're helping somebody like you get help that way, or not. The other person is. You know what I'm saying? It's not. How do I want to say? It's not one size fits all. So what you may share about how you, let's say, worked through this whole thing of accepting, will help someone out there, and maybe not the other person out there. Same what I'm doing, sharing this. Because we all have our different ways that we can get and understand things. So again, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to have a conversation with you via Zoom. So my contact information is right below the video. So definitely, I'd love to hear from you, and we can have a conversation first about what you're thinking about, and then set up a schedule. So that would be great. And also, if you like this video, please click like. There's a subscribe button as well. So, and then there's another little button to let you know when the videos are coming out, so that you can see that a video has been posted. And I think that's about all I can say today, which is probably more than I needed to, right? But we'll leave it at that. I want to encourage you. This is the other thing that I'm really working on. Maybe this is part of even accepting. Well, it is. You know what? I was going to say, be kind to yourself. And for me, this is a big challenge. So what does that really mean? That's part of acceptance. I'm just getting that. If I could accept myself with all of my flaws and things I don't like about myself, that's acceptance. That comes down to can't get any closer than that, to being kind to ourselves. And I know from a lot of people I listen to, it's harder to be kind to ourselves. In fact, it's like most of us find that we talk to ourselves in our head like we wouldn't even talk to our worst enemy, right? I've heard people say that, and certainly I can understand that. So yeah, very interesting. By being kind to ourselves, we're really accepting. That's another way to practice accepting, and I'm going to think about that for sure, and see if that can help me get into more being kind to myself. And also we want to be kind to others as well. So, the guy on the freeway that cuts you off, can we be kind to that person? Yeah, well, it's all kind of a big order, I know. But all we need to do is start to practice in whatever way we can. And that little bit of practice starts to a little more practice, and starts to have a little more practice. And at some point, we can look around and say, wow, I remember when I just was in so much struggle about accepting, and now I hardly ever have an argument with it. I hardly ever struggle anymore with it. So that's something to look forward to. So until next time, I'm going to click this thing off. It's become kind of hysterical with me now that I have this thing in my mind. Why can't I just click it? Here it is. And it just goes off. I don't know. It just doesn't do that. It's strange. It's something going on inside of me that says, you can't turn this off. Well, and I'm having a hard time accepting that, so I just click again. Okay, let's click and see what happens. Take care.